Hi cooking cronies, it's Vicki here today, and I'm going to show you how to make these really good chicken and dumplings in the slow cooker. Now, I've made my chicken and dumplings this way for years. The thing that's different today though is I'm trying out a new dumpling recipe I found over at Alicia Lynn's channel. I will link that in the description below. It takes only 2 ingredients. Now I'm going to start off in my Instant Pot, but I'm just going to use the slow cooker setting. So you do not need an Instant Pot for this recipe. You can use your slow cooker. I'm going to put 6 boneless, skinless chicken thighs in my pot today, and I'm going to change the setting over to slow cook. I'm not going to be pressurizing this. Now I'm going to add my chicken broth. And I'm going to use a little bit of bone broth as well, chicken bone broth. I've been adding that a little bit more into my cooking these days. So you'll see this, but most of this is chicken broth. I'm only probably adding maybe a 1/4 cup of the bone broth, and the rest is chicken broth. And I'm going to add enough liquid that it pretty much covers. It comes to the top of my my chicken. So that's what I'm doing, and I do add a few seasonings as well. I'm going to start off adding just a little bit of sage, and the sage I'm not measuring here. You can see I'm just sort of pouring it in, but I would say that's probably maybe a teaspoon, maybe two teaspoons at the most. It's not coming out very quickly there, as you can see, so I keep shaking it, but it doesn't take much. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of celery salt, and probably maybe a half of a teaspoon there, even though I am going to be adding celery to this as well. And then I'm using thyme, and I'm just putting a little bit in my palm, you can see right there, and dumping it in. Now, if you don't have chicken broth, you can use bouillon cubes and water, but I am using the chicken broth, and you can see my liquid is just to the top of the chicken. Now I'm going to go ahead and put the lid on. Again, I am not going to use the pressure setting on this. I'm using it as a slow cooker. So if you're using a slow cooker, you're going to want to cook this for probably, if you're doing slow, like a low setting, you're going to want to go for probably I would let it go for quite a long time, maybe 5 to 6 hours. You want to make sure your chicken is cooked thoroughly. So use a temperature if you can, a thermometer. But I'm using my high setting on my Instant Pot, and I'm going to cook it for 4 hours. Now, if you're using your crock pot, you can bump up your setting to the high setting and cook it for about 3 to 4 hours. On the crock pot, whenever I'm using this for slow cook, I always use the high setting. I never use the low setting for my Instant Pot when I'm using it as a crock pot. It just does not cook as well. So you can see those are cooking very nicely. They've been cooking for about 4 hours. Now I'm going to go ahead and let those cook a little longer. I've got them cooking, but I'm going to chop up 3 carrot sticks and 3 celery sticks. Just going to peel them and chop them into little pieces here. That's all I'm adding. If you want, you could add some chopped onion. You can add whatever you like in your chicken and dumplings, but this is all I add to mine. It's how my mom always did it, and it's just always the way that I've enjoyed chicken and dumplings. So we're from the South originally. I am from the South originally, so a lot of my cooking is inspired by the South. Now, I chop off the ends. I always use my peeler and peel my celery. I don't know if you do that. Let me know in the comments if you just chop yours, but I have always peeled my celery, and of course the carrots too. So I've got these all peeled. I'm gonna go ahead and rinse them off and chop them up. I'm going to add these to my chicken broth, my chicken and my chicken broth here, and that is looking very, very good. So I'm gonna, the chicken you can see is falling apart, but it still needs a little more time. So we're gonna go ahead and cover this back up, and I'm going to cook this for probably another hour. And while that's cooking, I'm going to go ahead and make my dumplings. Now, this recipe I found on Alicia Lynn's channel. I will link that in my description. It's 1 cup of, you want self-rising flour, and just under a cup of Greek yogurt, plain Greek yogurt. Now, I do not have self-rising flour, so I'm adding 2 teaspoons of baking powder to my mix here. So I just have all-purpose. So I'm using 1 cup of all-purpose flour and 2 teaspoons of baking powder to make it self-rising. And then I'm going to add a cup of yogurt. And it's just under a cup. And I'm going to go ahead and use my hands because I'm just cooking for Dawn and me. If you want, you can use a spoon. You could probably go ahead and put this in your mixer if you want, if you like to mix your dough there, but I just do it like this. And I'm just going to mix this up by hand until it's mixed. I'm just getting the flour and the yogurt sort of mixed up into a nice dough. Once I have this mixed up, I'll go ahead and put this out on my little floured board here, and you can see I'm going to be working with it. I'm going to add a little more flour to it just to get it to the consistency of dough so I can work with it. I probably ended up adding, maybe about another tablespoon of flour, and I did flour my board eventually here, you'll see. Once I have it to a nice consistency where it's not sticking to my hands, it did not take long at all to do this. And you can see I'm adding a little more flour. Then I just go ahead and knead this for 5 minutes. So that's once you get it to the consistency of dough, you've got it all mixed up, you want to knead it for 5 minutes. So that's what I've done. And then you can see I split it in half and I rolled half of it out. And I'm just breaking off little pieces and rolling them up into little balls. Now, I don't know that it was necessary to form the balls like this. I probably could have just dropped them into the broth, but the consistency of these dumplings were so good, and so I will continue to do it this way. The other thing I like to do with my dumplings sometimes is just roll out the dough with a rolling pin, and I use my pizza cutter to cut them into little squares, and that works out really good. It's more of like the shape and the look of a pasta, but this way I'm just doing the balls, and this actually turned out really, really well. And then I drop them right into the chicken broth. And once I get the dumplings all in the pot, I will add a little pepper on top. And I'm going to put the lid back on here and let it cook for 1 hour. And now you can see this turned out so good. This was amazing. The dumplings were perfect. I love the texture, and again, it had just flour and yogurt. Really good. I hope you enjoyed today's video. God bless.